بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Let's share the screen. And inshallah we want to continue with the Tafseer of Surah Al-Baqarah. So Surah Al-Baqarah, this is the overall overview diagram, as you can see there. And what we can see here is that this surah was revealed in Medina, yes, straight after the Hijrah, and approximately most of it was revealed by the time of the Battle of Badr, second year of Hijri. However, some parts of this surah were revealed later on, even up to the extent of maybe the end of the Hijri, when it comes to riba, for example, yeah, riba, interest. But most of the surah, as we mentioned, is revealed in the first 2 years of Hijrah, where the Muslim Ummah is now being formed into an organized group in a society in Medina, and therefore they are being built from the ground level up with Iman, and then Islam, then a vision of conveying the message, and then the means to attain this are Iman and Islam, of course, but then infaq and jihad, as we have mentioned before, yeah? So the section we are in, or rather we finished on, was this section on qital and jihad, because the believers are being prepared and they're being now educated about the objective of qital and jihad and the means, and if it comes to it that the mushrikeen, if it comes to the mushrikeen attacking you in the haram, then you can retaliate, but with justice, in order to get rid of fitna. Remember we said fitna. Yes, fitna is the situation where people are forced to leave their deen, or they are forced not to be able to practice their deen. This is the fitna that the believers were put through. So to remove this is essential. And for this, if the enemy fights, you fight back and you eradicate this obstacle. We will now look at infaq in one ayah, but then you will find later on the subject of infaq comes again, and quite a few times we will see in the surah that infaq has been mentioned just here in principle, and then it will be elaborated on later on. And then we will see Hajj and Umrah. So essentially what's happening in this surah, and I've tried to repeat this repeatedly, if you like, that the surah, it tells us about Iman and Islam. So in Islam today we will be looking at Hajj and Umrah. Yeah, we have already looked at Saum, fasting. And the vision is Shahada al-Nas, central ayah 143. And then infaq and jihad are mentioned in this surah. So with jihad there is qital, of course, yeah, armed fighting. Infaq is to spend money for this cause. So that's a quick overview. So let's look at the ayah 195 that we want to start with. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وأنفقوا في سبيل الله ولا تلقوا بأيديكم إلى التهلكة وأحسنوا إن الله يحب المحسنين. So here there is a command to do infaq, a command to spend in the way of Allah, because the Muslim Ummah, the Muslim society, the Muslim state, they will require the means to be able to go to war and defend themselves, to strengthen themselves. This will require economic aid, infaq. Infaq is to exhaust all your resources for the cause of Allah. And here specifically it talks about money. But money people earn through working, yeah? You have to work to earn money. When you work, you spend your energy, you spend your time, you spend your intellectual ability, your skill, your trade, yes, your bodily energy. All this is infaq. So you attain the money for this purpose. The money is not the purpose. Yeah? The money is not the purpose. This is a big problem, unfortunately, with us Muslims even, that we think that money is the goal. So I want, for example, we want our children to be very well educated, highly educated, professionals, and have the best jobs. What for? To make money. That's it. Full stop. Money is the objective. Money is the objective. Eh? So no, this is not the objective. Money is the means. Money is the means to attain the money to be able to finance Allah Ta'ala's message and its conveyance. So Allah Ta'ala is saying, وَأَنْفِقُوا. Anfiqu is a fi'l amr. It is a command to all the believers. Anfiqu. All you believers, spend in the way of Allah. The way of Allah is to make Allah Ta'ala's word supreme, to remove the fitna. لِيَكُونَ الدِّينُ كُلُّهُ لِلَّهِ, so that the deen is just for Allah. وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. And do not throw yourselves with your own hands into destruction. This is a very misunderstood ayah. Even previously, until the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, they explained this clearly to people. People would think that وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ, do not throw yourselves with your own hands into destruction. They thought maybe this means to go and fight. Because if you go and fight, then you're throwing yourself into destruction because you will be killed. Yeah. So this happened that some people, they mentioned that this is what it means, or they inquired that does it mean that if I go and fight. So in the Tafseer you will find all the detail of the people who by name and by reference that they said the Sahabi says, I went and I fought, or if I was to go and fight in the thick of the battle and I'm killed, does that mean that I'm disobeying this command of Allah, that don't throw yourself into destruction? So the answer was no, this is in fact what you should be doing, that you should be trying your best to fight the fitna, oppression and injustice with yourself and your wealth. The meaning of this, don't throw yourselves with your own hands into destruction, is that if you don't spend in the cause of Allah, then you as a Muslim community will not be able to defend yourselves when the enemy attacks you. This is you throwing yourselves into destruction by not spending and preparing for the battle. The other meaning is you are throwing yourselves into destruction by not spending in the cause of Allah, because this is what Allah, He has given this money to you for. So you have, instead of spending it in the right cause, you have been stingy, and therefore this will cause your own destruction rather than your salvation in the hereafter. You would be accused of bukhl, bakhilu, to be stingy and refrain from spending in what Allah wants you to spend on rightfully. Because the whole concept is very clear in this surah. When we say Rabb in the first ayah, in the first surah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Rabb. Rabb means the one who owns everything and can do with it whatever he wants. We are part of the Alameen. Yes, Allah has told us what to do with ourselves. So this is telling the believers, and until today this has been the case, whenever the believers have spent their resources to strengthen themselves as an ummah in all means, with all means, military, arsenal, defense mechanisms, etc., then they have been protected. So in the world today, you should know, you should research who are the nuclear powers of today. Which countries in the world have nuclear arms? And look at the statistics of who has the most nuclear arms. You would be shocked. I won't tell you. I won't claim to know who they are. You research yourself. Google it. We like to use Google for everything. So use Google. Ask Google, who are the nuclear powers of today? Which state, which nation has how many nuclear arms? And then you see that only Muslim country to have nuclear capability is Pakistan. And then if any other countries tries to even walk in that direction, they are bombed and they are massacred. And you probably don't know, young people, weapons of mass destruction, WMDs. We heard a lot of this in the news in the time of, I think, was it Blair, Tony Blair, that Iraq has these. They bombed Iraq, there's no WMDs. Yes? So Allah Ta'ala is saying that you have to, don't be the silly person who doesn't protect themselves. Don't be silly as an ummah. This is tulqu bi aydikum ila tahluka. You are inviting distraction by not being strong in your defenses. And if you look at the Muslim ummah, yes, and you look at the Muslim countries, they have the most material means available to them globally in the form of oil, natural oil resources and reserves, and this Allah He has given to them for infaq fi sabilillah, but they have not used this fi sabilillah to create defense and mechanisms of defense, etc., and power. So therefore now they are at the back end call of their own enemies. They're even happy to agree with their enemies because they are so weak. Yeah. This is in action today. This ayah. وَأَحْسِنُوا. وَأَحْسِنُوا means, the Tafseer says, Ahsinu means spend as much as you can in the cause of Allah. Ahsinu, the best. Spend the best in the cause of Allah. Spend the most in the cause of Allah. As if you see Allah, and if you don't see Him, Allah sees you doing this action. You do this all for Allah and the hereafter, and you would be happy here and in the hereafter. And if you don't, you would be humiliated here. خِذْيٌ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَيَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ يُرَدُّونَ إِلَى أَشَدِّ الْعَذَابِ. In the same surah, we studied this ayah. What does it mean? What does this ayah mean? I read. So you don't study the Qur'an. So Al-Baqarah, you should be reading it once a week with the meaning. It was talking about the Bani Israel when they picked and chose parts of the Sharia and they dismissed the other parts of the Sharia. Allah Ta'ala says that the punishment of this is humiliation in this earth, on this earth, in this life, and on the day of judgment you would be brought back to the most severe punishment. Yeah. So Allah Ta'ala is saying, do ihsan, do your best in this endeavor, because you depend on it and your akhirah depends on it. And you are the most privileged people because you have been given this khayra ummatin. You're the best ummah. Best ummah ukhrijat linnas. You have been made for people for their salvation. And if you do that, inna Allah yuhibbul muhsinin, Allah He loves the people who do ihsan. They will do their best in this. They will give everything for Allah. Like Habil, he gave everything for Allah, the best. And Qabil, he gave the worst. And Allah accepted Habil's sacrifice and He rejected Qabil's sacrifice. Allah Ta'ala informed Adam alayhi salam of His acceptance of Habil and rejection of Qabil. And Qabil became jealous and he murdered Habil. You see that? So the Muslim countries, they're doing the same. So Allah Ta'ala says, Anfiqu fi sabilillah. They don't spend on Allah, but they fight each other. Sanctions on each other, boycott each other. Yes? And they say this is our foreign affairs policy. The foreign affairs policy. This is in our national interest. So this national interest has superseded the Ummah's interest. Because we have become in the Asabiyya, Ta'assub. Ta'assub. Asabiyya is to be, what's the word? What's the word for fragmented, but loyal to your own clan. Nationalism, sectarianism. Yeah? So this is the killer of our times. So Allah Ta'ala telling us there's a way out if you do this. Then there is a lengthy section on, any lengthy, I mean, it's a few ayat, but it seems lengthy because the ayat is long. On Hajj and Umrah. Hajj and Umrah. So we mentioned, I think before, that every pillar of Islam has a purpose and objective. The pillars of Islam, one is Shahada. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. And then we have, after Shahada, we have Iqamat as-Salah, prayer. Objective of prayer is dhikr. Aqim as-salata li dhikri. To remind yourself of Allah, to remember Allah collectively, to keep Allah Ta'ala in our minds and hearts 5 times a day so that we don't forget. Then zakat. Zakat is for our tazkiyah, is to remove the impediments of the love of this dunya from our heart and mind by giving some of this dunya for Allah, for us then to be able to prosper and achieve our real goal, which is to please Allah, yes, in everything. Zakah. Sawm, objective of Sawm. Objective of Sawm is taqwa. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So that you may attain taqwa, consciousness of Allah, and you will obey Him where He says, do, you do, and when He says don't, you don't, because you know that's best. Taqwa. And then you have the Hajj. Hajj combines all of these. All of this is a combination of it. Hajj. Salah, Zakat. There is an aspect of fasting where you are not allowed to do certain things for a specific period of time. When you are in the ihram, there is the qurbani, the sacrifice. There is money being spent for the sake of Allah. There is remembrance of Allah. Hajj is a rehearsal. Hajj is a rehearsal for the Day of Judgment. Hajj is a rehearsal for the Day of Judgment. When a person goes to Hajj, you go prepared for Hajj, yeah? وَتَزَوَّدُوا. We will read the ayat, inshallah. Make preparation of the means that you need to travel. وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. The best provision that you can keep with yourself for the Hajj is taqwa. So this dunya is just like the Hajj going person. The person going to Hajj is rehearsing his death by leaving his family. Leaves family. Yeah? And leaves back behind the family, with the family, the means for them to survive. And then goes to Allah, labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Labbaik la sharika lak. That, oh Allah, I'm at your service, I'm here. Nobody is to be associated with you. All praise is for you. And the person is just praying to Allah, connecting with Allah, asking Allah, making dua to Allah. Dua. And the Yawm al-Arafah is the day of Arafah. And Arafah is the plain where the people would be resurrected and gathered, Hashr. And there the people in the Hajj on the day of Arafah is the day of dua. to ask, to ask, to ask, to ask, to ask. Because on the day of judgment, you can't ask. It's too late. So Hajj is a very, very important aspect of the journey of the believer from this dunya to the hereafter, and the actual settling in the Yawm al-Hashr, the place of Hashr, the place of gathering. So you see the rehearsal, and there is the aspect of shaitan. Well, in this journey, shaitan is your enemy, so you have to throw the pebbles at the shaitan to get rid of the shaitan from your way. Yeah. So Hajj has been mentioned here. That's the spirit of Hajj, if you like. But there is a form of Hajj which has been called manasik, which we term as the rites, rites, rites. The procedure of doing the Hajj as Allah wants it. So this links back to Ayatul Bir. Ayatul Bir, as we said, these are the abwab of Bir, the entrances or the doors to Bir. Yeah? And Ayatul Bir tells us form is important and spirit is important. Both are important. So the spirit of Hajj has been brought to what it was initially, because the mushrikeen, they adulterated all this. They changed so many things. They brought their own beliefs, baseless beliefs, into the Hajj, to the extent that the Hajj of Ibrahim ﷺ had been completely disfigured. So Allah Ta'ala, He sent the Prophet ﷺ to restore the Hajj to its right form and its right spirit. So the other spirit of Hajj is the universality of the believers and the Ummah. So that the Ummah, they go back after the Hajj, millions of believers, they go back with a renewed what's the word? A renewed focus and a renewed zeal, determination to carry on obeying Allah and inviting to His message. This is one of the spirits of Hajj. You see, it's a global gathering. It's very interesting. If you analyze it, you think about it. It is the global hub, Hajj. Global hub. No other hub like that. Nowhere. You show me any place like that. Nowhere. Where you find that many people from from every corner of the earth together and unison together. Yes? Because they have the same objective and the same goals as this surah has mentioned. So they go back and they then convey the message, become stronger. But unfortunately, we missed the whole point as an ummah. Millions of people do Hajj. Unfortunately, it happened this time, but Allah knows best when it will happen. But there's no change because the spirit isn't there, as this section will elaborate. So, in light of that, Allah Ta'ala is saying, وَأَتِمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْأُمْرَةَ لِلَّهِ. First rectification is you will complete the Hajj and the Umrah only for Allah, that's it, not for any other reason. So your intention has been corrected first and foremost. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, because every action is based on the intention. So Allah Ta'ala is saying you will complete the Hajj and Umrah just for Allah, that's it. No other reason, not to show like they used to show that we are from this tribe, so we are doing this, look at us. No, just for Allah, for His reward, for His pleasure, and as He has shown us to do it. This is also important. However, you will find that with every thing that Allah has made us mukallaf, mukallaf means we are bound to do something, we are expected to do something. Allah also brings ease when we are unable. Yeah? Allah Ta'ala's mercy. Allah Ta'ala's mercy. SubhanAllah. He knows better that we will sometimes not be able to do certain things. So instead of depriving us of that act of worship and obedience, Allah Ta'ala makes it easy so that we can still achieve the reward. Alhamdulillah. فَإِنْ أُحْصِرْتُمْ فَمَا اسْتَيْسَرَ مِنَ الْحَدْيِ. So if you are stopped, hasr, prevented, it says there. If you are stopped, hasr means that you limit something and it cannot come out of that limitation. In grammar, you will study kalima of hasr, innama. Innama, kalimatu hasr. فَإِنْ أُحْصِرْتُمْ, if you are prevented. So if we look at the context of Hudaybiyah, 6th of Hijri, Hudaybiyah, this is when the Prophet ﷺ was going for Umrah. But he was stopped, yeah? He was stopped from doing the Umrah at Hudaybiyah. So if you are stopped either because of the enemy or because of some other reason, you may have become ill or sick, or you may have had an accident. فَمَا اسْتَيْسَرَ مِنَ الْحَدِيِ, then you sacrifice that which you can easily. Yes, you sacrifice that which you can have the means to attain easily. And then وَلَا تَحْلِقُوا رُؤُوسَكُمْ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ الْحَدْيُ مَحِلَّهُ. And the ending of the Hajj or the Umrah, the ending of the Hajj or the Umrah, especially the Hajj, is by the shaving of the hair or cutting of the hair. Yeah? Shaving is better. Prophet ﷺ, he commended that more than the cutting. So to symbolize the finishing of the Hajj or the Umrah, Allah Ta'ala is saying, do not finish, meaning by cutting your hair, until your animal has reached its destination. If you are unable to sacrifice it because of your impediment, then you should ask somebody on your behalf to make it reach the haram and for it to be sacrificed. Okay? فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ بِهِ أَذًى مِنْ رَأْسِهِ فَفِدْيَةٌ مِنْ صِيَامٍ أَوْ صَدَقَةٍ أَوْ نُسُكٍ. Now one of the, there are 6, if you want to make a note of it, 6 prohibitions in the state of ihram. When you have the ihram, which means you have now decided that you will go for Hajj or you will go for Umrah, and then you take on the ihram. Now ihram is it is actual clothing, but for the men, which is the 2 white sheets of clothes unstitched. But for women, there's no such thing. They're just normal Islamic dress. I have to say Islamic because unfortunately today normal dress is un-Islamic dress. People say it's normal, it's not normal, it's abnormal. Normal dress is what Allah has said dress. So the 6 prohibitions in the state of ihram, one is any marital affair with wife or husband, any of their relationship. Number 2, hunting the animals that are on the land, bar. You should write this down. 6 prohibitions in ihram. I'm giving you bullet points. So marital affairs. Number 2, hunting the land animals, which means you can hunt the sea animal. Number 3, cutting hair and nails, prohibited during ihram. And number 4, applying perfume. So these 4 things, marital affair with your wife, husband, hunting land animals, cutting hair, nails, and perfume, this is prohibited for men and women. However, number 5 and 6, stitched clothes, this is prohibited for men, not for women. So the men have to wear clothes that are not stitched. So that's why you buy 2 sheets. Women, they wear as normal the Islamic dress. And covering the head and the face for the men is prohibited. Yeah. Number 3 is cutting your hairs and nails. Your hair and nails. So I repeat it. Number 1 is marriage, anything to do with the marital affair with the husband and wife. Number 2, hunting animals on the land. Number 3, cutting hair and the nails. Number 4, perfume. Number 5 and 6 is for men only. Stitched clothes you can't wear, and you can't cover your head and face. Men. Whilst you are in ihram. So in this you cannot cut your hair, but it says here, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ بِهِ أَذًى مِنْ رَأْسِهِ. But if you have a disease or your hair or in your head there is some problem where you have to cut your hair, then you can. So there's a famous incident in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. The Sahabi, his hair was very long, and suddenly it became overwhelmed with the lice, head lice. It became too much. So therefore he was told, shave the hair to get rid of this ailment, this disease. But in order to compensate for this fidya, you give fidya. And the meaning of fidya here, it says a ransom. Yes, you pay the ransom of either fasting, you fast, or you give the sadaqah, or you give the slaughter. So if you fast 3 days, or if you give charity to 6 poor people, and the amount is given in the Tafseer, how much to distribute between the 6 poor people, or you sacrifice an animal for this fidya, is because you had to shave your head because prematurely, yeah? Before you should have, because of this disease. Allah has given you way up. فَإِذَا أَمِنْتُمْ. But then after you have come out to this condition of insecurity, like for example the enemy stopped you, فَمَنْ تَمَتَّعَ بِالْأُمْرَةِ إِلَى الْحَجِّ فَمَا اسْتَيْسَرَ مِنَ الْحَدِي. Then if you are doing the Hajj and Umrah together, tamatta, so you have to understand there are few types of Hajj that a person can perform. You can perform a Hajj in which you just do Hajj, that's it, on its own. And then you can do a Hajj where you can do Hajj and Umrah, Hajj and Umrah. And another way you can do Hajj and Umrah. There's a difference. In the first, this is called tamatta. This is called Qur'an. Qur'an, yeah? Tamatta is the one where you do the you do the Umrah. In one ihram, you take off the ihram, and then you are free from the prohibitions of ihram, and then when the time of Hajj comes, you put on ihram again. Clear? Tamatta. Tamatta means you benefit. Mata. Qiran is together. Qarn. Qiran, you do Umrah in one ihram, and then the same ihram you don't undo the ihram. You don't come out of the prohibitions of ihram until after you finish your Hajj. Okay? So there's a background to this. The people of the Mushrikeen, they would not allow Hajj and Umrah in the same time. They would say Umrah is different, Hajj is different. You can't do it in the months of Hajj. You should do it separate. Allah Ta'ala is saying, no, you can do Hajj and Umrah together. Because especially if you are not if you don't live near the Kaaba. For the people who live near the Kaaba, then they can't do the Hajj and Umrah together because it's easy for them to do Hajj and Umrah separately. People who travel from far, they have been given this provision. You can do Hajj and Umrah together, and there are the two different types, Tamatta and Qiran. So Allah Ta'ala is saying here, فَإِذَا أَمِنْتُمْ فَمَنْ تَمَتَّعَ بِالْأُمْرَةِ إِلَى الْحَجِّ فَمَا اسْتَيْسَرَ مِنَ الْهَدِيِ. Then if you are doing this Tamatta, then take whatever you can easily as a sacrifice to show your gratitude that Allah has allowed you to do Umrah and Hajj in one journey. Yes? But if you are unable to take the sacrifice animal because it's expensive, فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ فَصِيَامٍ, who cannot, then you fast. Yes? 3 days in the days of Hajj, before the 9th or including the 9th, different opinions. And then when you have finished the Hajj period, you spend another 7 days fasting instead of the sacrifice. Okay? Tilka asharatun kamila, this will complete the 10 that you are being told. Allah Ta'ala is ordaining this. These are the manasik of Hajj. Not the manasik of the mushrikeen who used to make it up as they wanted, when they wanted. ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ أَهْلُهُ هَذِا الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. And this tamattu Hajj is only applicable to those people who do not live near the Masjid al-Haram. Yes? وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, have the taqwa of Allah. This is the spirit of Hajj. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ. You should know and remember that Allah, He is severe in punishment if you, so this is talking to the Quraysh especially, yeah? That if you do not now rectify your Hajj practices in light of this revelation, Allah is severe in punishment. Al-Hajj ashhur ma'lumat. Hajj is from the months that are known, meaning the months of Hajj in which Hajj, not only is performed, but the Hajj, the period in which people start to travel for Hajj is known. So this is, of course, the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, before that Dhul Qa'dah, and before that Shawwal. Yeah? Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, and the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. These are known. فَمَنْ فَرَضَ فِيهِنَّ الْحَجَّةِ فِيهِنَّ الْحَجَّةِ. Whoever then intends and decides to do the Hajj, yes, which means now you have decided and now you have taken the ihram on. You have entered into the prohibitions of ihram. Then you cannot do 3 things. فَلَا رَفَثَ. Rafatha we mentioned in the previous lesson in this fasting. What does it mean, Rafatha? I mentioned the linguistic meaning. You will not find it in this translation. The word Rafatha meant something very beautiful. Not very good, is it? Rafatha, look in your notes. Rafatha means it is a word that indicates something that people are shy to talk about. This is Rafatha. It's so beautiful the way it's said. That Allah Ta'ala is saying, those things that you are shy to talk about, do not do those. Meaning the relationship between husband and wife. There's so much haya in that. So number one. The second, wala fusuq. Then you will not commit any fisq is actually to go out of the limits, which means sin. You will not commit sin. Of course, normally you shouldn't, but especially when you are in the state of ihram, you should be extra careful. Wala jidala fil hajj, and then in your hajj you should completely keep away from any disputes, any arguments, etc. Completely, you have to control yourself, because this is a difficult journey, difficulties and ups and downs. وَمَا تَفْعَلُ مِنْ خَيْرٍ يَعْلَمْهُ اللَّهُ, and you should know whatever you will do, Allah knows, meaning He will reward you. You will go through this difficulty. You will have to control your desire. You have to control your tongue, your limbs, your eyes, your ears, your heart, your emotions. You have to control yourself, but Allah will reward you for this. And when you set off on the journey, وَتَزَوَّدُوا وَتَزَوَّدُوا Zad, the famous book Zadul Ma'ad, the preparation and provisions for the return to Allah. Zadul Ma'ad. Zad is what you take to fulfill your needs when you are traveling. The mushrikeen and other people, they misunderstood taqwa. They used to say, no, you are going to be the guests of Allah. You go without anything, He will take care of you. But now you go to Hajj and now you are begging the people. This is wrong. Yes. So, وَتَزَوَّدُوا. Go with the full preparation for your stay, for your food, for your drink, for your needs, and leave for your family what they need. فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. But the best thing that you take for your provision in your journey is taqwa. Go with taqwa, meaning you want to do it just for Allah, as Allah wants, being careful and mindful of Allah. وَاتَّقُونِ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. O people of understanding, O people of intellect and real appreciation of the facts as they really are, the people who understand the core of the matter, fear me, Allah Ta'ala is saying. Have taqwa of me. What time is it? 50. 50. لَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاحٌ أَن تَبْتَغُوا فَضْلًا مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. There is no harm on you if you seek the bounty of Allah. Most of us here, they mention that there is no issue if you will also enter into some sort of business transaction while you are at Hajj. So you may have, there was a famous incident in the Tafseer about the Sahabi who said that we take our camels and that the camels are rented during Hajj and we were doing Hajj. So is it okay if we rent the camels and we're doing a Hajj? And the Prophet ﷺ, he waited, and then this ayah was revealed. There is no harm upon you, blame on you, if you seek Allah's fadl, meaning financial assistance from Allah, while you are at Hajj. But this shouldn't be the primary reason for you to go to Hajj. This is the issue we need to understand here. فَإِذَا أَفَضْتُم مِّنْ عَرَفَاتٍ. And when you leave from Arafat, فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ الْمَشْعَرِ الْحَرَامِ. Then you should remember Allah Ta'ala at the Muzdalifah. Mash'ar al-Haram is a mountain. There are many details, but what I can just quickly mention. There is a mountain in Muzdalifah. And then when you get to Muzdalifah, you have to فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ الْمَشْعِرِ الْحَرَامِ وَاذْكُرُوهُ. Remember Allah كَمَا هَدَاكُمْ, meaning you should then pray Maghrib and Isha together. Allah has guided you to this. وَإِن كُنْتُم مِّن قَبْلِهِ لَمِنَ الضَّالِّينَ. And before Allah Ta'ala telling you this, you were astray from the real rites of Hajj. You used to make up your own ibadah. And this is important, that when you actually, I was surprised really when I went to Umrah first time. My dear respected Sheikh, he wrote a very small booklet on Umrah, and I was really surprised that the masnoon azkar, the things that the Prophet ﷺ, he said and did in Hajj, not Hajj, Umrah, they are so few, that we ignorantly we think sometimes, oh, this is nothing, I need to do more. So you find that there is a very few azkar. For example, when you go to when you're doing the sa'i, yes, there is just small zikr when you go up Safa or Marwa, small. Then when you're doing tawaf, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar, at one place. So simple. But you find in our countries, they have written books upon books on Umrah. In the first round, do this. In the second round, read this. In the third, read this. Fourth, read this. Fifth, read this. Sixth, read this. Seventh, read this. Now, we understand that there is a reason for that. The ulama, because the general Muslim public are ignorant of their deen, and then when they go to Hajj Umrah or Umrah, they will not say anything in these rounds. So to keep them at least occupied in the zikr of Allah, they have suggested some azkar, some du'as, yeah? So, but to understand that Allah Ta'ala wants us to do what the Prophet ﷺ has done. And Hajj really is about making dua to Allah more than anything else. ثُمَّ أَفِيضُ مِنْ حَيْثُ أَفَادَ النَّاسُ وَاسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهِ. And then depart from the place from where all the people depart. So there was this prejudice in the mushrikeen, especially the people who thought that they were special from the tribes, that they would not go to Arafat. Yes, they would not go to Arafat. Yes, they would just stay in Muzdalifah and go to Mina, no Arafat. They used to think Arafat is for the second class people. Allah Ta'ala is saying, no, depart from there, from where everybody departs. Don't think you are special, that you can't leave Muzdalifah for Arafat. No, you go to Arafat. Because actually, Arafat is Hajj. Al-Hajju Arafat. The Prophet said, the day of Arafah is the real Hajj, the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. Wastaghfirullah, and you should ask Allah for forgiveness of this act that you used to carry out, that you used to think you don't need to go to Arafat, you are special. The other thing is that when you come to Arafat, the whole point to be in Arafat is to do istighfar, to seek Allah Ta'ala's forgiveness and remind yourself of the day of judgment, the day of gathering, and to seek this as a chance to be able to be forgiven for the day of gathering. So seek Allah's forgiveness. Inna Allah Ghafur Rahim. Indeed, Allah, He is all gracious, forgiving and merciful to His servants. I think we'll stop at 199. We will inshallah cover the next few ayat. There are another, I think, four ayat about Hajj next week, inshallah ta'ala, bismillah.